Next up, one thing that Congress does do well is spend taxpayer money, but not only are they good at it, they're often so proud of it, they're more than happy to put their own names on taxpayer-funded projects. Senator Robert Byrd famously had his name on dozens of buildings and highways all over his home state of West Virginia, but a Texas congressman wants to put a stop to all these monuments to me stuff, all this self-congratulating vanity projects. He's Representative Micahel McCaul. He joins us from Austin, Texas. So good to be with you tonight, Representative. But, you know, you've been pushing this since 2008. How come you've been saying this should stop since 2008? How come it's been such slow going?
Well, it did pass on one of the appropriations bills, and it became the rule of the House that we cannot pass or spend money to name projects or buildings after sitting members of Congress. This is really the height of arrogance and what's wrong with the culture in Washington that I think needs to change. I've reintroduced the bill because, as you pointed out, in the Senate is where we're seeing more of the really big abuses. Half the state of West Virginia is named after Senator Byrd. So I want this to pass the House again and then go to the Senate, where it can be signed into law so that members can never do this. It will ban this practice forever. You know, Congressman,
there's a joke in West Virginia that people get lost in West Virginia driving around in circles. They take the Robert Byrd Road to Robert Byrd Highway to route Robert Byrd. But really, you make a good point about this, and that is that, you know, for number one, a reader of the Wall Street Journal wrote in a letter, and he said, look, there should be a sign that these projects are funded by taxpayers. Shouldn't every one of these buildings have a sign on it that says funded by the U.S. taxpayer? No?
You know, it's so self-serving, and I think so. They should say that. It's very self-serving at the taxpayer's expense. And, of course, a member that has something named after themselves are going to want to reappropriate taxpayer dollars to continue the program or add on to the building or whatever it is. And it's a real abuse of power, in my judgment. If we can't do the small things like this in the Congress, how can we possibly take on the bigger ticket items?
But you make a good point. You have said that these kind of vanity projects that are paid for by U.S. taxpayers provide for gateway spending for even more appropriations and more pork spending. Is that true?
That's correct. I mean, and, you know, when we are, the earmarks, which still take place in the Senate, are a good example of how I could earmark money and name a highway after myself or a program that I'm going to continue to fund through the appropriations process. I'll tell you this, the appropriators don't like this bill, and, you know, I'm taking them head on this. And it's both sides of the aisle that participate in this practice. And I think the American people, this is exactly what they're sick and tired of in terms of the culture, the abuse of power, and we need to reform Washington. This is just a small measure that I think would send a bold statement.
You know, and you make a good point, too. These are basically taxpayer-funded billboards for these incumbent elected officials, right? To say, hey, here am I on a bridge.
It's free advertising.
It's free advertising.
Yeah, it's free advertising back home. And you know, Wall Street Journal wrote a great editorial on my bill.
Yeah, by William McGurn. That's right. All right.
Thank you.
Congressman,
I'm glad you read it.
That's right. It's a terrific piece. Congressman, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with your bill. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Next up on deck, the gates are closed at Allentown Metal.